Help me welcome Bob Rubin.
You want to start or should I?
Oh, you can start.
I mean, it's a really remarkable Western, also to see it restored to the director and writer's original intention. It's a hard movie to place in the history of Westerns because it was made at a time when Hollywood was changing so much and the genre was changing so much. And it has a foot in the past, a foot in the future, and it's also its own thing. When I was asked to do this, the first thing I did was Google Westerns 1970s, and Wikipedia has a very handy list by year of what was made. And in the final column, it gives a characterization of each Western, almost like a subgenre categorization. So obviously in 1970, 71, 72, you're getting a lot of spaghetti Westerns, you're getting a lot of revisionist Westerns, you're getting acid Westerns. You all remember El Topo. And this film is the only film that's described as an epic Western, and I think that's quite appropriate. But it's not epic in the stilted sense that How the West Was Won is a overblown epic. I mean, there were a lot of movies at this time that were big budget movies that were box office flops, which opened the way for all these indie movies. I just want to mention a couple of other movies that came out at the time to kind of give this some context. The movie that this most reminds me of, even though they're very unlike each other, is The Ballad of Cable Hogue by Sam Peckinpah, which he followed The Wild Bunch with. And, it's kind of a late Western, an end of the West kind of Western. It also, in watching this is the third or fourth time I've watched this movie, you can also see that Blake Edwards took a page out of the Peckinpah playbook in the very end, when the man-made violence as opposed to the random violence, the shootout in the Mexican bar really changes the tone of the movie and makes it very somber. But just to give you a few other ideas, this was the time of Little Big Man, Soldier Blue, Doc, The Hired Hand, McCabe, and Mrs. Miller. So you can see that this movie was still representing an older Western tradition at the same time that it was bowing to new ones. The other strange association that I had, and this is not at all to compare the quality of the two, because Yellowstone has kind of degenerated into a cross between Dynasty and Dallas. But what the two share in common is this almost a celebration of ranch life, which I think is Yellowstone's strong point, is the way that it injects a kind of a lyrical beauty into the workaday world of the cowboy, and re-romanticizes it at the same time as it demythologizes it. And the final comment I'll make is that the scene where he breaks the horse in the snow is certainly one of the top 10 scenes in any Westerns. And at first, when I saw it again, I said to myself, if you made a list of the other great moments in Westerns, they all tend to be gunfights. And I was trying to think of a Western where that wasn't the case. You think of the end of The Wild Bunch, the end of the West, the man who shot Liberty Valance. The only other Western I could think of that had a scene of that power that wasn't a shootout was the cattle drive in Red River. But this was better. This was better choreographed, better edited. Just an amazing scene.
Yeah, I want to follow up and essentially in agreement with what Bob has said. I think the film is unique because it's true that it can be critical and somber about not only just the West, the Western myth, but human folly. At the end, it's just devastating. Everybody dies, and the one that don't die are finished. And but at the same time, it has a word that you used before we were chatting upstairs, elegy. That there is an elegiac or elegiac. You can see both, but quality to it, that it's extremely beautiful, and I think also the relationship between William Holden and the William Holden character and the Ryan O'Neal as it evolved, that monologue that he has at the end, it's incredible. It's it's second best to the horse breaking scene when he describes how he didn't think of him, and then within a week we were circling around each other. Within a month we were trading lies. A year, within a year we rob a bank. I mean, it's just beautifully written, and I think that Julie Andrews was so right before when she said that William Holden is one of his greatest performances, I think, but also is the generosity that he allows Ryan O'Neal, who just had come out from Love Story. So this is quite a different movie from that one. And I think also the unique, beside this sort of conflict emotions and tones, I think some of it is cinematically unique because you have scenes where it becomes abstract. The horse scene is one. When the vision, when he thinks he's cutting his leg, it's just like avant-garde. It's surreal, and it in all these things make it a very, very special movie, and really different from those revisionist Western that you mentioned before. A Little Big Man and Blue Soldier.
Yeah, because the revisionist Westerns are kind of turning the genre on its head, and this is too much of a celebratory movie of the West. I mean, I also have to talk about the scene with the puppies and the animal love, because it contrasted so sharply with the way they were treating their horses, and then when they had the fight with the sheep herders, which is another analogy to the Yellowstone prequel, and they're indiscriminately shooting these poor sheep. And then against that, when Julie was remarking about how Blake Edwards was trying to turn the good guys into the bad guys and vice versa, I mean, Ryan O'Neal's animal love. And then the old veteran who's is ready to trade a mule for this puppy.
Yeah, it's all these contradictions make it just heartbreaking.
And then as a tribute to what a great filmmaker he is, he sneaks in at the end of that scene, because you have no sense of Ryan O'Neal's talent as a cowboy, and then all of a sudden he shoots the cup, and you realize that Ryan O'Neal is a serious cowboy, and that's really the first evidence that you have of it.
And another thing that I think it's just incredible is the use of landscape. Monument Valley has been photographed so much, and and of course is identified with the films of John Ford. And here the landscape just comes up at the end, when the film turns darker, and it's used in this glorious beauty and as a juxtaposition to the sort of the end of the journey of these guys, which is not going to end well. Do you have any question?
Sorry. While you were talking and you had your list of Westerns, and you said this is so unique, I just had the idea, why do you call this a Western? Because it's a movie about human condition on many levels. It's just set in the West on horses.
I can't argue with that, but I think we do tend to categorize these things. We can say it's other things besides a Western, but it's definitely a Western. I mean, you know, the whole setting and the art direction and the costuming and the lifestyle. You know, I mean, there are lots of Westerns that are more than Westerns, but they start as Westerns.
And to go back to what Bob was saying about Yellowstone, which is something that we both independently thought of, you know, as I was watching the movie again yesterday. It's that opening sequence when it has that, you know, and this is what Julie Andrews was talking before about, you know, the boredom of the life, but, you know, the attention to the spur, you know, the way the horse is, the close up, you know, that sort of, I think Taylor Sheridan has been watching this movie a lot.
Yes. Yeah. The scene where they're eating in the bunkhouse. That's
Yeah.
So,
Even the framing seems similar. Yeah. Yeah. Is someone there?
It struck me, I wonder if Larry Kasdan was influenced when he made Silverado, because this has the broad scope and majesty of it, and yet the human relationships and the intimacy of the characters are very similar. And Jerry Goldsmith's score is as Bruce Broughton's was in that. And the horse breaking scene kind of reminds me of the horse breaking scene in Seabiscuit. So I have to hope that this influenced both those filmmakers in doing that. It's a beautiful film.
Here.
Oh, thank you. It seemed to me one of the elements that distinguishes this film from so many others is love and friendship is at its heart, you know, between these two men. I mean, if you look at other Westerns, that usually breaks down. For example, in Valdez, it's sort of racial. It's Mexican versus American, or it's a woman, or it's tonally something like Sundance, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, you know, opposites. But it's never about affection, love, you know, it's, so this is a very, to my mind, unique characteristic of the film.
Yeah, I think a lot of that is due to the casting of Ryan O'Neal. And Ryan O'Neal gets a bad rap because of Love Story, but he's obviously and people have called him miscast in this film, and I disagree completely. I mean, Ryan O'Neal, he made Barry Lyndon. He was fantastic in that. And then he played The Driver, which is a completely different movie, and he excelled at that. There are kind of Western buddy films. You know, you can think of Joel McCrea and Randolph Scott in Ride the High Country, or even Holden and Borgnine in The Wild Bunch, but they're not, you know, they're not like emoting in the same way. And you know, even when you think of John Wayne and Montgomery Clift in Red River, that's more like Oedipally charged, because these guys are not related. They're like an organic family. But it's true. It's a unique dynamic in Western buddy pictures.
I also thought the irony of the fact that they wanted to leave the payroll for the guys they worked with. You know, they didn't want to screw those guys. And of course, you know, they keep the money, and that's why they're being hunted. I don't know if it would have been different if they got their payroll, but I thought that was a great touch. It reminded me of the horse breaking scene in The Misfits, and which we screened a couple years ago. But that was an amazing scene, but it was much darker than this. And this was kind of
it's
beautiful,
joyous,
playful. Yeah.
Right. This was celebrating the craft of being a cowboy,
Right.
You know, how to break a horse. Right.
Anybody else? No. And the film, yes. Yes.
I just wanted to say that this lovely gentleman here hit on the absolute crux of the movie, because it was the banker and the banker's wife that if they had given the money back, there would have been no cops and robbers chase. And that's one of the scenes that was cut out by the head of the studios. And that's what broke Blake's heart the most and made him leave America, actually. He said, I'm not going to make films in America. Of course, he came back and did. But he was away for many years and made films in Europe after that. But that was exactly the moment that the movie changed from, wanting vengeance eventually. Well, the ranch owner wanted vengeance. And then the two boys, and it's very well. I'm looking at it now after years and years, and the editing is so beautiful too. I hadn't realized every detail of what life must have been, or we think life was like.
It's just a keystone of showing the bad guy's not so bad and the good guy's not so good. And, without that, I can see most things don't make sense, or it's a much different movie.
Yeah, and and in terms of the shooting and the editing, the first scene when you see Karl Malden's wife waiting, the way that she's framed from the porch and on a side, and it's the house. I mean, there is so much information, so much detail in all those frames that it's incredible. You just know, and the scene with Karl Malden with the two stupid sons, one's more stupid than the other, and he's an honest guy, and he has this, and you just see, while the other two maybe would have been they would have been better sons. I don't know. There is so much going on between this character that it just keeps you thinking. And wanting good things for them, but there is that folly element, and that takes everything apart. Anyone else? Okay, well, yeah. Wait for the mic. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, it's an amazing film, and it's an amazing film within Edwards' career, because Edwards is all about screaming contradictions. The same guy who directed this very touching, somber film is known for the Pink Panther films, but is also known for a variety of other types. Within this film, you've got characters who don't make sense. In other words, Ryan O'Neal is supposedly holding a gun on the family. At the same time, he picks up the puppies, and the character after character does things grossly contradictory within themselves, and it's just a stunning, fascinating view of the way real people function in the real world. It doesn't make sense, but it's also very, very powerful.
This seems like a good. If nobody else has a question, this seems like a good way to finish. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Julie Andrews.
Thank you, Julie Andrews.
So wonderful. Thank you, Bob.